Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today I read an article on the root. An article was about a Duke University professor named Jerry Hough, who posted some controversial comments to a New York Times editorial article. And I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts or a couple of statements from that article, and then I'm going to provide further commentary. In this article, he refers to the Baltimore mayor as being utterly incompetent. And he goes on to compare African Americans to Asian Americans. And he says, in 1965, the Asians were discriminated against as least as badly as blacks. So where are the editorials that say racism doomed the Asian Americans? They didn't feel sorry for themselves, but worked doubly hard. He goes on to talk about how African Americans give their kids strange names and how Asian Americans give their kids simple American names. And he talks about how this is a sign that African Americans are less inclined to make strides to integrate into society. And he talks about how Asians are more inclined to make efforts to integrate into American society. And another example that he cites of this effort to integrate is interracial dating. He says that Asians are more likely to interracially date than African Americans, and that Asians are more likely to intermarry than African Americans are to intermarry with whites. And he basically goes on to say that black-white dating is almost non-existent because of the ostracism by blacks of anyone who dates a white. So those are his comments, and I'm going to provide my brief response. The notion that Asians were discriminated against equally as African Americans is just false. I mean, of course, Asians face discrimination in this country, but the discrimination that they face cannot be compared to what African Americans faced in this country. We have to remind ourselves about how African Americans came to this country to begin with. We didn't come here as voluntary immigrants like Asians came to this country. Asians came here voluntarily. They wanted to pursue the American dream, so they left their motherland to voluntarily come to this country. And when they came to this country, they brought with them their language, their customs, their culture, their religions. They brought their identity as Asians. On the other hand, the African American was kidnapped, stripped from his motherland, from her motherland, brought in this country through the Middle Passage. We were in slave ships, locked in shackles, stacked together like sardines in a can, wallowing in our own feces and urine and vomit. Many of us didn't even make the trip. We were thrown overboard and fed to the sharks. And when we came to this country, we were completely dehumanized. We were physically, mentally destroyed, raped, beaten, killed. We were stripped of our original languages, our original customs, our original names, our original religions, our original culture. And that crime against our humanity still manifests itself today. We don't even know what tribes we come from. what nations we come from as a people. We have a general sense, but most of us do not know exactly where we come from, unlike Asian Americans. They are able to identify what countries they come from. They are able to identify what particular ethnic groups they belong to, whereas we have been deprived of that. And after being thoroughly stripped of our basic humanity, we were subject to the worst form of oppression in human history. For centuries, we were enslaved in this country. We weren't human beings, we were property. No other people endured this kind of oppression. And then after slavery, we were subjected to Jim Crow-ism. Yes, the Asians were discriminated against in 1965, but were they lynched to the same degree that the African Americans were? Were their leaders killed like African American leaders? And in this article, he basically talked about how African Americans whine. We don't whine, we fight for our humanity. We fight for our basic human rights and equal rights. Just as the white man fought for his rights when he fought the Revolutionary War in this country for freedom from Britain. They don't call that whining. They don't call that complaining. That's celebrated as patriotism. But when we stand up, we're considered whining. Or worse. And as documented in the article that he commented on, African Americans were systematically deprived of opportunities to build wealth through housing. We were denied loans. We were denied access to certain neighborhoods. So that prevented us from passing down wealth to generations. And that locked many of our people into a vicious cycle of poverty and crime. To ignore that reality is to be detached from the truth. Those Asians don't face those kind of problems. They have access to loans. And this notion that African Americans don't work doubly hard is ridiculous. Many of us were taught that we had to work twice as hard as a white man in order to get the same level of respect. We've always worked twice as hard. And there are many prosperous African Americans in this country that are living proof of that work ethic. But the professor ignored those people. Now I want to go on to this issue of integration. No other people have expressed more love for this country than the African American. This country gave us every reason to despise it based on its treatment of us. Yet we still maintain some degree of patriotism and love for a country that doesn't love us. We've fought in every single war that this country has had, from the Revolutionary War and till the wars of today, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have fought to be a part of this country. We marched and we died and we were jailed for our right to integrate into this society. As we tried to integrate, we were met with billy clubs upside the head. We were met with vicious dogs that ripped our flesh. We were met with lynchings and shootings. Many of our leaders were killed just so that we could be a part of this American society. So it's just ridiculous to suggest that African Americans haven't fought to be a part of this society. We've adopted this alien culture and tried our best to navigate our way through this new world. And for this condescending, racist professor to say otherwise is truly sickening. It truly is. He went on to talk about interracial dating and suggested that African Americans don't interracially date. And I've stated my position on this issue, so I won't go into depth about how I feel about interracial dating. I'll just say this. African Americans interracially date with whites and they interracially marry with whites. It's just an obvious fact. It's not rocket science. So this article is nothing but an attempt to degrade and attack African Americans. And it also pits so-called minorities against each other when really they should be working together against discrimination in this country. See, because these Asians and all these other groups that come to this country, they have benefited from our civil rights struggle. If it wasn't for our struggle, they wouldn't have the rights that they enjoy today. So those are just a few of my thoughts about this issue. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.